Welcome to another edition of the Sports Roundup. I am your host, Brandon Glogau, and today we are joined by former Major League Baseball umpire Dale Scott. Dale, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Brandon Grant. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Oh, we appreciate your time. Dale, like I said, 32 years in the league. That's a real long career for either both a player, coach, or an umpire. So
Right.
talk about just your journey of making it to the MLB between the academy, the minors, and now the show.
Yeah. Well, it was quite a journey. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, and loved baseball. And I was pretty, in my mind, pretty destined to be a first baseman for the Dodgers. I figured that was easy to do that. Of course, as I started playing in my youth, I quickly realized that I couldn't run, hit, throw, or field. So that was kind of a problem, trying to be a major league first baseman. So when I was 15, going into high school as a sophomore, where they only have a varsity and JV team, and me not being on either of those levels, I was trying to figure out a way how I could stay in the game that I loved doing. And of course, at 15, I'm, too young to coach, and I, who said I would be a very good coach anyway, frankly. But somebody suggested umpiring, and when I, in my playing career, I was on the bench a lot, so I saw the umpires a lot. I had a chance to observe umpires, and I thought, that might be something fun to try. So when I was 15, that's what I did. I started umpiring in the Eugene area, and I fell in love with it. It was umpiring or officiating in general is a very unique job. It's not made for everybody, although everybody officiates. But I just fell in love with it. I started doing basketball and football also as at 17 and 18, and it was a lot of fun. After doing that, I was working in radio, and a couple of years, the rest of high school, a couple of years of college. A friend of mine suggested umpire school. He said he had gone a few years earlier. He didn't get a job out of it, but he loved the experience, and he really thought I would also. And he thought, you have a lot of potential. I think you would do really well there. And so that did interest me. And so I went to umpire school when I was 21, and I got a job out of it. I got a minor league job, which completely changed the course of my life. The radio thing was suddenly on the back burner, and thinking that I could always go back to that once this baseball thing, fizzled out. Because let's be honest, the odds of getting to the big leagues aren't huge. Not very many spots there, and not very many openings usually. So I got a job in the minor leagues. I thought, I'm just going to ride this wave and see how long it'll go. And maybe I'll burn out on it, or maybe they'll tell me that it's time to get off. But that never happened. And when I was 26, I was hired by the American League in 1986, and turned 27 during that season in August. But it was a big thrill for me. And that was the start of 32 years and almost 4,000 games.
You said you wanted to be the first baseman for the Dodgers. Almost every athlete, whether they're a baseball player, basketball player, football player, so be it. They all have dreams of making it to the show, and
Right.
then they all have dreams of playing that World Series game. You as an umpire, not only did you do 32 years, you made it to the show. You've been part of some pretty historic games, things that will last with you probably for the rest of your life. So one thing we could talk about is something that changed the country with 9/11. You were part of the 2001 World Series. You were the home plate umpire, and you met George Bush when he threw out the first pitch. Now I know you met. We talked earlier. I know you met him before, but out of all the World Series that you've done, all the playoffs, all-star games, what was that moment like? What was the atmosphere like in the Bronx that night? Considering what not only the country, but that city in particular went through, and all the hype and emotion that was going on.
Yeah, well, it was incredible. I've written a book which comes out May 1st, and called "The Umpire Is Out," and I described this more thoroughly. But it was an incredible time for this country. Obviously, we were in shock at what had happened on that day at 9/11, specifically in New York, obviously, and of course the Pentagon and the flight that went down in Pennsylvania. But I was assigned that World Series. Of course, the season had been disrupted, obviously, for it was paused in September. It got started. This was going to be the latest World Series on record. Of course, that's been broken now, but it was the first time it ever went into November, was the series went. But it was just incredible. I think it was like 8 weeks, give or take, from the attack is when we were in the Bronx for game 3, 4, and 5 of that series. I had game 3 behind the plate, and that was the game that the president was coming to throw out the first pitch. And, of course, it was at an old Yankee Stadium, and, old Yankee Stadium, like MLB stadiums in general, they have very good security and that kind of stuff. But on that night, with a presidential visit, anytime there's a presidential visit, the security ramps up, obviously. But after 9/11, it was incredible. For example, at old Yankee Stadium, for a normal game, we show up, we go into the press gate, we have our credentials. A lot of times they don't even ask for them because they know who we are. It's the same guy there all the time. And we go down these stairs, and there'll be a security guy at the bottom of the stairs, and you go down a long hallway, and then another long hallway, and take a right, and there's the Yankee clubhouse. You go right in front of that, and you go, another 30 yards or so, and there's the umpire clubhouse. And so you have a security guard at the bottom of the stairs. You have a couple of them around the Yankee clubhouse, and you have one outside of the umpire room. Okay, great. On this night, for the 9/11 security, the presidential security, and just World Series security, which is always ramped up. First of all, you went through metal detectors. We had to show our credentials, even though it's the same guy that I've seen for the last X amount of years. But this is how it works these days. And Jimmy Joyce and I, him and I were working that series together. We went to the stadium. You always go earlier in a postseason game just because of all the hoopla going on. But I think it was an 8:20 pitch, something like that. I think Jimmy and I got there at 5, quite early. Usually a normal regular season game, where they're about an hour and a half before the game. Well, this was well before that. But and one of the reasons, just because of the security. But we went through a metal detector. Went down. There was not only the security person there that's usually at the bottom of the stairs. This long hallway, there were security people standing every 10, 15 feet. I mean, just lined up on the other hallway in front of the Yankee clubhouse. Instead of 2 or 3 guys, there were 6, 7. I don't know. Walked down to the umpire clubhouse. There was a couple there. I mean, it was the security was unbelievably intense that evening. Jimmy and I walk into our locker room. We're the first ones there, but sitting across the way as we walk in is a gentleman. We don't know who he is. He's just sitting there, but he immediately introduced himself. He's a Secret Service agent. And he said, I'm here because I'm going to dress up in a umpire uniform, and I'm going to go on the field when you guys do, when the president throws out the first pitch, because and they also had 2 Secret Service guys dressed up in a Yankee groundskeeper uniforms on the field, because they don't like it at all when their subject, the president, if they can't be around him. And President Bush was going to be on the mound all alone, with nobody around him to throw out the first pitch. Now, granted, anybody that's coming into that stadium is going to go through huge security searches. Granted, Secret Service and authorities, they had snipers up on the place was secure. It doesn't matter. He's still there alone. And he even under his jacket had a flap jacket or a bulletproof vest. Doesn't matter. They weren't near him, and so they wanted to be in uniform on the field, kind of blending in with the crowd, or with who's supposed to be out there, but also a little bit closer than they normally would be. Anyway, so that was what was going on, and the whole evening up to game time, was surreal. The president did come and visit us in the locker room. In fact, he was there when we walked out, and then he came out later. A lot of times when you're at a stadium with a dignitary or a politician or whatever, but specifically a president, when security is so huge, a lot of times they will end up in the umpire locker room for just the simple fact that it's a much smaller space than a clubhouse. Usually just one, maybe two entrance exits into a umpire clubhouse. And almost always an umpire clubhouse is very close to the field where they're going to, go on to. So it just makes sense for them security wise. They can handle and patrol that or whatever much easier. So it's, that happens. Of course, President Bush had a lot of baseball ties, former owner of the Rangers. And so he came in, signed 24 baseballs, took pictures with us. We talked for about 20 minutes before we had to walk out on the field. Now you got to remember, I've got game 3 behind the plate. I've got Roger Clemens against Brian Anderson of the Diamondbacks. I've got a lot on my mind. And then you just add to the fact that you have a ton of people in your clubhouse that you normally don't have. And then the president. You really have to mentally compartmentalize and really kind of focus on why you're there, but also take in the moment of what's happening, which is rather surreal. So it was it's quite a baseball umpiring, officiating in general is very mental. It's very you have to focus, you have to just blank out certain things and just deal with what you have to deal with. And that was a true test on that day.
You talk about how baseball umpiring and officiating is very mental. Obviously different circumstances with that particular night, given what was going on. I told you before, I officiate baseball, and something I've always wanted to know, and I've wanted to pick brains of other umpires. I had Field and Colbert from the last podcast. If you had a bad relationship with a team, player, manager, or one of the coaches on the team, and you got to see them again, whether it's the next day or a series, how do you go about just trying to put, because you have to make the next day a new day. That's just a golden rule of sports. But it's easier said than done, especially if it was a big controversial call that maybe ended the game. How do you go about just your new approach on the next day or the next time you see that team?
Well, that's, again, part of that mental muscle that you have to, that you learn as you gain experience in this job that you have to use. I mean, like you said, every game's a new game and you have a clean slate. That being said, certain players, managers, teams, depending on the situations, have a rap sheet. Okay. Certain guys bitch. Okay. Certain guys are going to question stuff. Excuse me. You have other guys that, rarely say anything. So when they do say something, you think, maybe he's onto something, because, he doesn't normally complain about stuff, but you understand the rap sheet. So it's a clean slate, but if a habitual bitcher starts bitching about a pitch or about a this or that, you're because of his quote unquote rap sheet, you're going to probably cut that off a lot quicker than somebody that doesn't say much. They have a right to complain to a point. They have they know what they can say and not say. They know the automatics, and if they cross that line, they'll be ejected. I mean, one thing as officials, baseball in particular, because we have no warnings, basically. I mean, we don't, you're either ejected or you're not, for the most part. There's no technical foul. There's no, 15 yards or whatever. So it's a very finite, judgment. I mean, once it's done, it's done. They're bye-bye. So we understand that, and we're not going to, abuse that, so to speak. That being said, ejections are part of the game. Sometimes managers want to get ejected to fire up their players or fire up their crowd or whatever the reason may be. Sometimes a player will, he'll call him out on strikes and he'll spike the bat. He knows he's going to be ejected. I mean, and if he thinks he wasn't going to be ejected, then he hasn't been around very long. So as an official, you use ejections when warranted, when they need to be used. And so it's not like you're looking for, oh, I can't wait till I eject somebody. But once that line is crossed, once, something has happened that warrants that, you're going to eject him. It's part of the game. It's just like calling a guy out. It's more, a lot of times, entertaining, for the fans and stuff. But you as an umpire, you don't want to be afraid to eject guys, but you also understand the finality of it and how you're not going to abuse that. Most of the time it's abused by the player. They, like I said, they know what they can and cannot say or can and cannot do. And when they cross that line, to act surprised, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you ejected me. Well, I think you do know why you were ejected. So, back to your question, every day is a new day. You understand the guy. And yeah, the other thing, Brandon, is, for example, I'm on a crew with Danny Isonia. I worked with Danny for 10 years. There may be a manager that I get along with, and the other three guys on my crew doesn't, or a guy that him and I just do not get along. And yet, Danny has a good rapport with him. Maybe Danny had him in the minor leagues, so he knew him, or had some kind of relationship with him, professional baseball relationship with him, and knows him or whatever. And so it's a game of personalities a lot of times, where on the same field at the same game, a manager or player treats me differently than one of my partners, just because of personalities and maybe things that have gone on in the past or whatever. So that comes into play also. But and how you handle somebody might be different. The way I handled Tony La Russa may be completely different the way than that Danny handled Tony La Russa. We're both hopefully getting the same objective, which is quell the situation and keep them in the game. But it may be two different ways of doing it to get the same result. And if I tried Danny's way, it wouldn't work, for me. So all that comes into play when you're dealing with players and managers, and then it's just experience. The longer you've been there, I've made mistakes. I've ejected people when I shouldn't have. I was too quick. I've missed ejections, which are the worst, because you really feel like the guy got away with something when he shouldn't have. Plus, when you miss an ejection, you got to remember the rest of his team is seeing it and that other dugout's seeing it. So if you miss something and I think, wow, can I do that too? Can I say that, or can I, throw that, or whatever it might be that I missed them. So you have to understand, as an umpire, whatever I'm doing is being observed by both teams. And so, you eject somebody, maybe they'll say, well, I guess maybe we shouldn't do that, or I see what happens if you do that, or whatever. So there's so many things that play into those types of relationships as far as arguments and ejections. And so each one is kind of an individual thing, and the situation's individual or, different every time. So all that plays into it.
So this is going to lead me to the next topic. You were part of, today's game of baseball. When you say the benches are clearing, it's usually a little pushing and shoving, maybe yelling back and forth at each other. You're not going to see the old school brawls that you used to see back in the day, but you were part of probably one of the more bigger baseball brawls in today's game with the Texas Rangers and the Toronto Blue Jays twice. You're the home plate umpire, and you got to see the first hand of Jose Bautista's crazy bat flip.
Right, crazy game.
Yeah, crazy game, crazy bat flip. I'm sure that's something that will stick with you for a while. And then the other time, then the following season, when he slid past Odor and Odor punched him in the face, and another crazy brawl. That's really the only time you really see something like that. Where I'm going with that, we'll talk about the two games. But when Matt Bush drew at Bautista the last at bat, I believe, was behind the plate,
Yeah.
and he issued a warning right away. And some people thought, he should have been ejected. Some people thought, good call by the warning. Do you like the new rule now with baseball where everyone gets together and you could talk about what they have to do? Because, sometimes, you mentioned you may have a good relationship with a manager, but the other members on the crew don't. And then let's say that manager disagreed with what he did, you don't know what's going on in Dan's head, what he's thinking. Do you like the new rule where the change in the game is going?
Well, that was a rule that was implemented after I, left the field, and I don't know the intricacies of it. I don't know, how they explained it to the guys, and why it was implemented, and the, any rule, you really need to dig down and understand why the rule was ever put there to totally understand, how to enforce it or why it's there. But on the surface, do I like it? No, I don't. Here's how I umpired, how I was taught in the big leagues coming up, and then when I became crew chief, how I implemented it. There are times where when you're on the bases, you hear or have a feel a little bit different than the play guy who's immersed into every pitch or whatever. And there may be a time when a pitcher hits a batter or doesn't hit him, but basically, it's real close. Is he throwing at him or did he get away? That kind of thing. And there are times that a plate umpire won't pick up the nuance of it where we see it on the basis. So what I'm trying to say is, if for example, if we had a situation and I felt that a warning should have been put in place, or even a bigger penalty, but is totally in the book, an ejection should have taken place without warning, I'm going to jump in and do that. Or my partners, if I'm on the plate and see or hear something that maybe I didn't, or understand something I did, they're going to jump in, and at least we're going to talk about it. But to be forced to do that every time, I just I don't know. It's hard for me to make a real big judgment on it because, like I said, I don't know the genesis of this. I don't understand exactly what the league is trying to do, so it's tough to make a call on it. But from the outside looking in, I would say no, I don't like it, and for the reasons that I discussed. It's sometimes this rule is one that you basically have to know intent of the pitcher, and it's very tough to know the intent of a pitcher because sometimes it's obvious. Guy hits a home run, the next guy gets smoked. You go, okay, even if that got away from you, that was a really bad time for it to get away from you, and I'm going to issue a warning or whatever. But there are other times where it just kind of comes out of nowhere. A batter is all of a sudden rushed back or throws behind him or something, and you go, whoa, what was, there was no red flags. Nothing was saying during that game or during that series that, keep an eye out for this guy hitting because they might throw at him or whatever, and that those are the times you're going, okay, what exactly is happening here? And I'm trying to read what the pitcher's thinking. That's kind of tough to do. The other thing is when you have situations like I said earlier, where maybe you hear or see something on the basis that a plate man may not have knowledge of. For example, if the last play, last out of an inning was a force at second, and the runner was pretty aggressive when he came into the base or something. He didn't do anything illegal per se, but he was very aggressive when he probably didn't need to be. It was a force out. It's not going to be that close. Whatever. You may hear some talk. Plate man's maybe getting some baseballs. Guys are changing, coming in and out, offense, defense. But right there at that play, the second baseman or the shortstop and the runner, they might say, "Hey, knock it off, do," or they would say they're talking to each other. Like the second base umpire hears that. Now that's going to put a real red flag in his flag. Okay, the guy that slid in, player A here. Next time he's up, they may throw at him, because they're pissed off at him because of that slide, right? So I might wander in between innings to my plate guy and just say, "Hey, so-and-so did this, and they said this. Just keep an eye out." So he's not caught off guard all of a sudden when 2 innings later, player A comes up and he gets smoked. It's like, where did that come from? Well, now he has some knowledge that he didn't know, but I knew. So I passed along to him. So that as a crew, you want to communicate. You know, it might be just the guy, nothing said there, but the runner goes in, gets his glove or is, you know, in shallow left, waiting for his glove to be brought out. And you know, the left fielder coming in from the other team says something, you know, and nobody knows it happened. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm the third base umpire, the second base umpire, and I hear it again. The flag goes up, and just, you know, let my partner know that, hey, this happened. Nothing may come of it, but if something does come of it, at least you have some knowledge to where, you know, why it did. So those are all things that you do as a crew to help, you know, be ready for that kind of stuff.
So now we'll get into the what led to that topic was the Blue Jays and Rangers series. Umpiring in general is the hardest thing to do, and broadcasters do admit it, even though they're quick to criticize you guys also. So first you had that throwback from the catcher to the pitcher that ricocheted off the bat. You ended up calling it a dead ball, but then you got together as a crew and you counted the run. So with that being said, and then fans started throwing items on the field, and it became a madhouse. What was going on through your head? You know, what nerves are going on? Because then you had the manager coming out. He's pissed now. You got fans throwing things on the field, and it's really not a safe environment for anybody at this point.
Right. Well, it was like we like to say, it was a S house. I won't tell you what the S means, but that's what it was. And again, you know, in the book coming out in May, I have a whole chapter about this because it was an incredible, not just incredible game 5 of a divisional series playoff, an incredible inning. This all happened in one inning. The 7th inning, which, you know, was an hour and something longer. I mean, it was insane. You know, I had, if somebody had said to me right before I walked out to work the plate on that game 5, they said, "Oh, by the way, Dale, you're going to have a play you've never seen before. Several disruptions because of stuff being thrown on the field, 2 ejections, and a protest. Now go get them." You know, I would have probably said, you know, I might retire right now. I think I'm good. You know, I have worked almost 4,000 games. I've worked, if you count playoff plate games, everything else, exactly 1,000 plate games. I have never seen with the runner on, the catcher throw the ball back and hit a hitter. You know, just standing there. I saw it one time with nobody on base. It was the first hitter of the bottom of the first. And that's, you know, which is, it's, you know, it was nothing. No, there's nobody to advance or whatever. And it was completely, in fact, it was Molina who did it, playing in Kansas City. I forget the hitter, the leadoff hitter for Kansas City. And Molina was like, he was, you know, so apologetic. He goes, I said, "Yanni, how many times have you thrown the ball back to the pitcher in your career? You know, a zillion?" And he goes, "Have you ever done it?" He goes, "No, I've never done it." You know, I mean, it was like, that's one thing about this game. You never know what you're going to see. But this time it happened with a runner at third. And I had, you know, I screwed up as far as initially, because we had the year before there was a rule about a runner at first, less than 2 outs. The pitch was in the dirt, but the hitter swung at it anyway and missed, but the hit the catcher and it kind of rolled back off onto the plate area. The hitter swung and he's disgusted and he's in the first base thing. So he just started walking to the dugout and he kicked the ball or hit the ball with his foot. Not intentional whatsoever. But when he did that, the runner took off for second. Well, there's a rule if there's unintentional interference, basically, if what I just described happens, the ball's dead, he's still out on the strike 3 and all runners, you know, cannot advance. Mm-hmm. So when this happened, he threw the ball back. That's what kind of came into my mind. Whoa. You know, which was wrong, but that's my first, that's why I called time. And immediately when I called time, I'm coming out, Odor comes flying in from third. The ball was nowhere near a Blue Jay. They had a shift on anyway. And it was rolling, you know, kind of toward third base, but Donaldson was almost in the shortstop position because of the shift. Plus Odor, right when the ball ricochet. He was gone. I mean, he flew into home. So right when I'm kind of walking in front of the plate with my hands up, I'm thinking, whoa, 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 in my mind, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. That's not dead. That's not dead. That's not dead. But with my arms up, so now I'm feeling like an idiot. Well, immediately, Jeff Bannister for the Rangers, the manager for the Rangers, who was an ex-catcher, because I goes, Dale, why's that dead? That's not dead. He goes, I'm a catcher. I know that. I did that once. I said, well, because of the game and the enormity of the game and the procedures that we have to go through, even though I was pretty doggone convinced that I had screwed up and that ball should stay alive, I've got to bring the crew in and have a crew consultation, which I wanted to do. So we all got in, all six of us were there. I turned off my mic so TV couldn't hear. And I said, and had my hand over my face because I didn't want to relive. But I said, guys, I think I screwed up here. I called time and that ball, I explained what happened. They said, yeah, that's live. I go, okay. We're all on the same page there. I said, that ball, if I had not called time, the Jays had zero chance of throwing him out. They said, absolutely. There was no one near the ball. And he broke. And I mean, he would have scored without a play. In fact, the play hadn't even got to the ball yet. I said, exactly. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to score the run and I'll take care of John, which is John Gibbons, the manager for Toronto, because I had a pretty good idea he might be not be happy. And, we were talking about relationships with managers. I'd known John a long time. I have a pretty good relationship with John Gibbons. We've had our arguments, we've had our rejections, but he's a guy that I can talk, that he'll listen to me. Let's put it that way, where some guys maybe would not. So I score the run and, John comes flying out and, I just explained to him. I said, John, that ball's alive. And, and he said, well, it's got to be interference. His bat, he was out in front. He interfered with the throw for Russell's Martin's throw. I said, no, that's not what. In fact, he had stepped back almost and he just kept his bat out there, but he was just, doing what he normally does between pitches. So that had nothing to do with it. And he goes, well, the ball's dead. I go, well, that's just it. It's not dead. It's not dead. And the fact of the matter is if I had not called the ball dead, that run would have scored easily. I mean, there was, here's the thing, Brandon, if they had a play on him and they stopped because of me calling time, now I got to live with that. Now I'm going to have to send him back because I did call time and deal with those ramifications, which would not have been pretty. But that's, that would have been on me. What we did is get the play right, but we didn't look real good doing it, or I should say I didn't look real good doing it, but we got the play right. And, I explained to John, I said, I'd do the same thing for you. This is, first of all, and second of all, and he was really pretty, I mean, he was angry and a little confused, but he wasn't belligerent by any means. Again, because of the procedures we have now with replay and we can call in replay for a rules check and everything, that's what we needed to do. So I went in, with the replay, I said, I want to make sure we're everybody's on the same page here. I explained what I did, what happened, they said, you're absolutely right. That ball's alive, and now it's up to you to do whatever you think you need to do. But you're correct as far as that ball is alive. So I told John that, and he said, okay, well, I want to protest. I said, and I've never had a protest game in all my minor league, big league career. And I said, okay, what are you protesting? He said, everything, all of it. I'm going to protest all of it. I said, well, John, you can't just protest all of it. I mean, you have to tell me what you're protesting, And he goes, well, I'm protesting that the ball's alive and that ball should be dead. And I said, okay. So, the rule, what you're saying is the rule that we misinterpreted was we should have called that dead instead of, by scoring and saying that the ball was alive. So now because he protests procedures, I have to go back to the headphones and go back to the replay operations center, the rock, and say, I've got a protest. I want to make sure, and again, this is time consuming. There's people are not happy at Sky Dome. these are wonderful people from Canada. They usually are pretty, even keel, but they're also hockey fans, so they know how to get a little bit fired up. Okay, and I think they'd been probably having a few libations ever since they knew there was going to be a game 5. So this was a fired up crowd. And of course, I think the first time we started talking, John and I started talking, stuff was starting to be thrown onto the field. The Rock said, correct. You've applied the rule correctly. It is a live ball, blah, blah, blah. So I go back to John. I said, John, this is we got the rule right. If you want to protest, you still have the right to protest, but you're going to lose it. But whatever you want to do. He goes, yeah, I want to protest. Okay, boom. So I let everybody know the protest. And I said, finally I just said, John, this is what we're doing. The run's scoring and we're going to start playing again. So now do you want to get ejected or do you want to stay? And he said, I don't want to be ejected. I don't want to be ejected. I said, okay, then we're going to get going. I mean, you're going to have to go back in the dugout now. We're not going to, there's no more to discuss. This is what's happening. You've protested and we're going to get going. And that's what we did. At one point, I don't know if it was right then or soon after, there was a delay in the game as they were picking up debris from the field and stuff. And one of the Toronto police was standing next to me when they were picking stuff up, and that kind of stuff. Some of them had good arms, but a lot of them running short. But I joke, but I mean, you could get hurt. I mean, they were throwing, I saw hot dogs and batteries from radios and, all kinds of stuff. But I remember the police, as we're standing, he goes, I don't know about you, or I don't know, something like, I don't know what your plans are, but when this game is over, I would suggest you and your buddies get off this field as quickly as possible. I said, you are thinking, I said, great minds think alike, because that's exactly what we're going to do. Don't worry about that. So anyway, we get through that half inning, the top of the 7th. So they go ahead 3-2 on that play. Then the bottom of the 7th was, the Rangers, I think, made 2 errors in that inning, possibly 3. I mean, their defense fell apart. The game was eventually tied, and then Batista comes up. I think it was 2 runners on, I think. But anyway, he comes up and he hits
3-run shot. Yeah.
Yeah, hits that. It was a tie game when he hit that mammoth home run. Sometimes when the ball's off the bat, you think, oh, that's not going to get out. And it does, or that thing's gone and the wind knocks it down. Of course, at Sky Dome, there's no wind, but you see one or hear one and you think immediately, oh, that's gone or that's not gone. And it's the opposite. This one was gone. I mean, when he hit that, it was like, this thing has been absolutely smoked. And the roar of that, of Sky Dome, Rogers Center, was, I've heard loud crowds in several stadiums and whatever. The Metrodome comes to mind when I had a 163rd game there, an extra game to for the division. But it was the loudest ever. I mean, it was like a jet engine. It was unbelievable. And I remember the ball was hit, and I'm taking my mask off, watching the ball just going, that's gone. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, and I kind of looked, and I see the bat flip, and I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting, because that's just a no-no. You just don't do that, or at least that's the unwritten rules, and those seem to be changing a little bit also. But I just, again, made a mental note, because this is not going to, go over well. And of course, the Rangers, quite frankly, put themselves in that position. I mean, with the errors, just uncharacteristic errors that they made in that half inning, but that's baseball. And of course, the bat flip was quite something. And the pitcher came, we had another delay as the teams came out, and this kind of, that's, but we finally got through that game. The next year we get our schedules. I see, as I'm going, through the schedule, I see in May that we go to Texas for Toronto. And I know they only play 1 home and 1 away. So I looked to see when Texas was going to be in Toronto. Was it before our series or after our series in Texas? And it was before. It was, I don't know, 10 days, 2 weeks before us. So I thought, well, maybe maybe they'll get it out of their system there. Maybe they'll, because you knew they're going to brawl. I mean, that's just, at some point they're going to brawl. They're going to throw out Batista or something. They're not happy with it. And so, I thought, well, maybe, naively, I guess, I thought maybe they'll get it out of their system up there, and we'll have a relatively quiet series, with an asterisk, thinking that really probably won't happen. And of course, it was church up in Toronto, and so it came to our series, and I told the guy. Of course, we had a heads up. There's a heads up program in MLB that we get a heads up when a certain series is coming up, that heads up, this team back last year did this, or 2 years ago, that they just kind of a synopsis of the bad blood maybe between a couple teams or a couple players or whatever, just to give us a heads up to the point that I had talked about earlier, so we're not just taken by surprise when all of a sudden somebody gets smoked and you go, well, what is this all about? Well, it happened a year ago, but nobody told us, or whatever. So obviously we had a huge heads up for this series. And of course we didn't need it because I was there. I mean, I knew there was a heads up on that, but so going into it, we were well aware of what was happening, as were both teams. Now, again, remember, they only played 6 games all year. They already played 3 in Toronto, these 3 in Texas, and they don't meet again. And this is mid-May. So, the first game we get through, nothing. Second game we get through, nothing. So here we go. The last game of the series, last game of the season that they'll play. And it doesn't, nothing even happens till the 7th inning, I think, is when they, is kind of the perfect setup. Batista comes up with nobody on. And, because, if he comes up with bases loaded or runners at second or third, or, whatever, they might walk him, or they might, that's not a good time to hit him, or, this is like the perfect time. I mean, he's coming up, there's nobody on. It's like, here we go. And every, we're all on alert, we're ready. And sure as heck, he gets hit, in what we would deem the proper way. They didn't throw at his head, which would be an automatic ejection in that situation. So, a warning was given out. Batista wanted him ejected. He went to, I was at first base. He got to first, and he was, bitching and moaning about being thrown out, which could not have been a surprise, quite frankly. But, so that's what happened. So now I'm thinking, okay, we got the warnings out. It's late in the game. That's probably his last at bat. May not be, but good shot that it may be. Barring a type of ball hit that he can break up a double play, or maybe a base hit to right, and he tries to go from first to third and he can slide in hard to third, or somehow come around and score. I mean, barring any of that, we may be done with this situation. I mean, if it's a couple flyouts and the inning's over, then he can't, cause any havoc. Well, of course, that didn't happen. It was the ground ball to set up a double play attempt, and that's when he went flying into second base with an illegal slide and interference. And the throw to first, Odor trying to complete the double play, and of course he was interfered with. It was a wild throw that went to my right, not even close to first, and toward the stands. And of course, as a first base umpire, I'm following the ball because that's what I do. But as I'm following the ball, I see out of the corner of my eye the first base dugout, which is the Rangers dugout, all these guys jumping over the, and running onto the field. So it's pretty damn obvious that no one's following the ball now. Something's going on at second. I didn't actually see the first, that I saw it in replay. I didn't see it on the field because I was watching the baseball. But the play was over now. It was all everything was happening at second. And in my 32 years of baseball, and you were correct setting this up, usually brawls are, pushing and shoving, and the guy that's really mad gets really mad once someone's holding him back. But before he's held back, he's a little bit more. I mean, it's sometimes really kind of pathetic. But I saw 2 unbelievable brawls in my 32 years, and I write a lot about that in the book. One was back in, it was in 90, 94, 93. It was the second game of a doubleheader, Oakland at Milwaukee. That was Vijay Surhoff just got smoked by a relief pitcher for the Brewers. But kind of like the Odor hit. I mean, smoked and blindsided too. Had no idea it was coming. But that brawl was a good brawl if you're talking about actual brawl. And then the one I'm talking about here, because that Odor, I got to give Batista credit. He didn't go down. I mean, it was a standing 8, but he didn't go down because he smoked him. But then of course all hell broke loose, and John Gibbons actually for Toronto had already been ejected earlier by Danny over pitches. He's back on the field. That's an automatic, more of a fine and suspension. At one point, we had to break up the 2 managers. In most cases, not all, in most cases, the managers and coaches try to be peacemakers. Not always, but try to. Not this time. they were wanting to. I think I had John and Lance Barrett was taking Jeff Bannister to his dugout. Escorting. I was escorting John, just trying to keep them separated. This was after a lot of this was over and stuff, but it was quite a brawl. I've got a great picture of me kind of with my arms out, all these players behind me, and both managers are one on each side of me screaming at each other, and I'm like, it's just it was quite something. But that was that one and that brawl in Milwaukee in the early 90s. Those were the 2 best I've ever seen.
You talked about when you went to the replay center in the playoff game, and before that happened, you turned your mic off because you don't want anyone to hear. Something that does come up in conversation in a lot of baseball games for fans that may not know every single rule, they want to maybe have like in football where you could hear the conversation, what's going on. And the other thing that comes up, usually broadcasters who are former players say, if you threw out one of their players, they start to criticize you. They go, now the umpire is not going to be held accountable. They're not going to have to talk, and the player is going to get fined. So the first part is, do you think you guys should have a wire where fans could get educated on what's going on the strange play? And the second part is, to kind of save your rep, and so that way your name doesn't get bashed and trend on social media in a negative way based on a call. Do you think you guys should have the right to speak after a game and, give your side of the view and educate people, so that way, because, a lot of fans want umpires gone. They just announced that they're going to have robot umpires in AAA, and that's what they want to lean to. So what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, as far as having some kind of a microphone to announce stuff, they actually, in the last CBA, have the union and MLB have agreed to a kind of like when a referee says, holding number 57, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It hasn't been implemented yet because, the COVID season that was screwed everything up. I'm not exactly sure why it wasn't implemented last year. Now we have a CBA situation with the players, and so this year we don't know if we're going to start on time, if we're going to lose game, whatever. So be honest with you, I'm not even sure if it'll be implemented this year. But it's in the CBA with the umpires that if everything had gone smoothly in 2020 without COVID, after a replay or anytime there was a odd situation or something on the field, the crew chief could then open a mic with the PA of the stadium and of course the television and radio audience and say, after further review, the tag was applied before the hand hit the base. The call is reversed. He is out. Or whatever the situation. In most cases, like if they're just reviewing a bang bang play at first, it's like, well, the ball did beat the runner or the runner beat the ball. That's why we're not changing it or changing it, whatever. But there are those times where there might be an obstruction or an interference or some kind of a spectator interference type thing, or a line of demarcation that it should have been a home run. It was called live, or whatever. And so the umpire, the crew chief, will have the opportunity to explain what they have, why this ruling is what it is. Now, it doesn't mean people are going to agree with it, but that's going to be happening. And it kind of not obsessed me with it, but I was in radio for 5 years. I would have loved being able to announce plays like White Hats in the NFL do, but unfortunately that came into place after I left. As far as the second part, when a game's over, we do, as a crew chief, have the opportunity to go in front of the press, or usually the press comes to us, unless it's a postseason game or something. Then you go to a press room to explain either the ruling, the rule, or what we had or what happened or whatever. It is up to, not so much in postseason. You're pretty much going to have to get in front of the press, whether you like it or not. But during the regular season, if it's something, it is up to the crew chief to allow the press in. A lot of times the press, when I say the press, they'll just have a pool reporter, and they'll have one guy come in with questions, and then he gives the answers to all the press. So everybody has, instead of having 6, 7, 8 people come into our locker room, it is completely up to the crew chief to allow that or not allow. Just say no, we have no comment. There's a cooling off period. They don't want any press, either one pool guy or multiple press, into our locker room until, I believe it's 15 minutes after the game's over, just for everybody to cool off. It also gives us a chance to now get off the field and watch the play on video, which everybody else has seen, but we haven't, except in real time, to watch exactly what came across on video, and for us to help explain what happened and that type of thing. But again, and there's no as far as I know, I've been out for a few years, but there's no stipulation by the league that that, like I think in the NFL, you're not supposed to comment on anything, basically. I think it's up to the NFL office to make comments. The officials themselves are muted by their by the league not to do that, I believe. And the NBA, I think, is similar type of thing. But we are allowed to talk to the press. It's up to the crew chief if he wants to or not. What happens a lot of times, Brandon, is the power of the pen, meaning the press, is very powerful. And I have found in the past, when I've explained why something happened, or I explained a rule, or I explained why this person was ejected or whatever, then I read the next day part of the explanation or part of the rule, or they leave out something that's really part of the context of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so it makes us look worse than what really happened, because it's not thoroughly, or they just get it wrong. They just misinterpreted what I said, or whatever. There's nothing we can do about that. I mean, if you try to the next day call that reporter in before the next game of the series, if it happens, during a series and not on getaway day, and try to, restate what you were saying, or tell him how this was wrong, that gives it another news cycle shelf life. And who knows, they may not get it right then either, or they may decide not to put that in, or only put part of it. I mean, they can really, how it's edited and how it's portrayed really is out of your hands, and really can affect. So you try not to get into a pardon the word, but you don't want to get in a pissing match with the press, because you're going to lose, basically. And so, my philosophy when I was crew chief is, if we had a unusual situation, or a volatile situation, or some kind of ejection, multiple ejections, or whatever the situation, I would talk to the press. And the other thing is, the crew chief has the right to, let's say it was a junior member on my crew, maybe a AAA guy going up and down, or a real new guy. I'll talk for the crew. They want to talk to him. You know what? You're going to talk to me. This is what happened. I mean, you have that right to do that as a crew chief. Or you can also bring in the umpire in question, and be there. But you always want to have a witness of your own crew when you're talking to them, because that way, when if they write something that just wasn't said, or just blatantly isn't what we told them. At least, Danny was with me. He heard me say that this is not what we said or whatever. But what I found is, when I had those situations, I didn't have a problem talking to the press, but I would just basically, I'd answer their questions, but, I would either cite the rule that is in question or describe the situation, why it was handled in such a way. But that's all I can do. And now it's out of my hands as far as how they report it and how it's perceived by everybody else. And then we move on.
And the way I want to wrap this interview up, you're repping the Umps Cares shirt.
Yes.
I mentioned before I had Fielding Colbrook, who's
He's a great guy. Yeah,
great
he's
guy.
one of my favorite guys.
And something we talked about on the last podcast is the shortage of umpires in youth and high school sports. Like I said before, I've been doing it for about 6 years now, umpiring. Even high school, we have a shortage of umpires, at least in New York. Some of it is COVID related. I guess, people just don't feel comfortable. And then the other part is, unfortunately, umpires in youth sports tend to take abuse from parents and coaches because they think their kid's the next Derek Jeter. And that's just all over the place. And you just got it. And some people just can't tolerate it. And Umps Cares, they're running a program, and I believe it's with the Philadelphia Phillies, where they're allowing them to use their facilities to let teenagers get into umpiring. So first of all, I just want to talk about, what do you think we could do to try and get more umpires, and what training do you think there could be to kind of be able to tolerate, parents and youth coaches? And something I brought up with Fielding is, I personally believe there should be instant replay in youth sports and high school sports. So that way, if there's a bang, bang play, you could challenge it. Because I think a lot of those fights that you see on TV with parents of other teams and coaches and the umpires all start with our call. And I feel like if we have that could help eliminate that. And, hey, we went to replay, what else do you want from us?
Well, that's a good goal to have. The problem with replay is to do it right, you're going to need several cameras. You're going to, because you need, several angles for a lot of these plays, and you're going to need somebody to run those cameras. You're going to need somebody to run the, technical aspects of bringing that in, and like a technical director of some sort, and then going to each angle, the ones that are pertinent, and to do it correctly. And the reason I say that is because if you only have one camera somewhere or two cameras somewhere, there's going to be a lot of plays you just can't tell. Okay. And so fans and parents, and they're going to see what they want to see. Okay. And I've even had obvious replay of a out, safe, whatever, that went against, somebody that I, just watching it, and they'll say, no, he's out. And I go, how do you have him out? The foot is on the bait. It's like, it blows my mind, but they see what they want to see. And so, as good of a goal that may be, it may also actually cause more of a problem, because now you'll have a replay that really you can't tell, and that's going to fortify the person that's going against you, saying, well, see, there you go. So there's a lot of Pandora's box that opens up with replay, and it's the same way with us up in the big leagues now, or any league or whatever. When replay came into effect, it was like, oh, well, great, now there'll be no missed calls ever, and it'll just be rose petals and lollipops the rest of the way, because no one's going to be mad. And it's just not true. How many times have we seen replay where you just can't tell? The one angle looks like he's out, the other angle looks like he's safe, or you don't have the proper angle for that particular play, or the proper angle is perfect, and here it comes, and a player gets right in front, right before the actual play, and you miss the whole thing. So it's not going to stop. And well, look at football catches. Catches did it. You can, of course, everybody's confused what the rule is in catch, but you can look at a catch, no catch, and 50 say it's a catch and 50 say it's a no catch. I mean, even with replay. So replay is a tool. It a lot of times will help, but there are many times that it just clouds the situation more because people are going to see what they want to see, and you don't have a real, perfect shot of it or whatever. So, the philosophy that this will make the game called perfectly just isn't reality. And that's why all officials or leagues go with the call on the field. If you cannot, if there isn't, obvious video evidence that it should be overturned. That's why the call on the field is so important, because that's your default unless it's changed. But, so it's not going to, you're still going to have arguments or disagreements with replay. And don't even get me started on pitches because, the K zone and all that stuff is, if you ever, okay, the plate is 17 inches wide. That never changes. And by rule, if any part of the ball, which is about 2¼ inches in circumference, if any part of the ball is over any part of the plate within the, high-low zone, that's a strike. Okay, fine. That makes that 17-inch plate now suddenly 2¼ inches, basically 2 inches wider on one side and the other, right? So now suddenly we have a 21-inch plate, 21-inch and change. So that, that's one thing. That never changes. The high-low changes for every hitter. It could change for every pitch because by rule, it's the high-low when he's about to attempt to strike at the ball. Well, if somebody's bunting, their strike zone, same guy, is going to be different the next pitch if he's not bunting, right? That never changes. You never see that change on these K zones, right? You have a Judge coming up and then Altuve coming up. Big difference, big difference in their high-low strike zone. And so it's a facsimile of the strike zone that people see on their screen. It's not by any means 100% accurate, but that's how it's perceived. And so, anytime a pitch that's just off the line is called a strike, oh my God, that's obviously off the plate. Really? First of all, I'm not even sure if they're giving you that baseball buffer of 2¼ inches. But second of all, really, it's obviously on. You have your 1/4 inch off that, and that's obviously off the plate when it's going 97 miles an hour. Really, come on. I think what people expect from a human being is perfection in a game that's played by human beings that are not perfect. I mean, I always tell people, if there's runners at first and second, or bases loaded, 1 out, perfect double play ground ball to the shortstop. I mean, made to order, out of the inning, double play, and it goes right between his legs. Do we say, well, after further review, he usually gets that, so we're going to give him a double play? Of course we don't. He made an error. Runs scored. Things don't look good for the defense right now, okay? But when a official has a bang bang play or a close pitch, it's hell to pay if it's not 100%. Now listen, we go out and try to be 100% accurate every single time. That's our goal. Are you going to miss a pitch or a play? Yes. We have replay for plays. Replay for pitches is a whole nother ball game. It's a 3-dimensional. The strike zone is 3-dimensional. You can have a pitch that hits the very front of the plate at the very low point of the knee of the strike zone, but is moving outside and down. So the catcher catches it 3 or 4 inches off the plate, right off the ground. By rule, that's a strike. It hit part of the strike zone. In reality, does an umpire call that a strike? Absolutely not. Do they expect that to be a strike? Absolutely not. Neither team does. Maybe the pitcher, but they expect everything to be a strike. But the point is, I've always said this, and I think it's so true. There's the art of officiating and the science. The science are the rules. This is this, and this is this, and this is when this happens. This happens. That's the science of the game. of umpiring. The art is applying the science, applying those rules into the situation, into the level that you're working, into what's happening on the field, blah, blah, blah. And that's a perfect example of, by rule, by the science of baseball, that would be a strike. In practicality, in the art of baseball, that's not. Now, if, in my opinion, if they're going to advance the robotic strike zone, so to speak, they're going to have to change the rule. They're going to have to change how strikes are, the definition of a strike, basically. And I'm not sure how they're going to do that. But I mean, from what they've used the robotic strike zone, so far in the Atlantic League and in the Fall League, and now they're going to use it in AAA this year. They have found that, they've tried to clean up the accuracy of it and this and that. And there's, like anything else, it only does what it's programmed to do. But I think they've all, and again, this is all my opinion. This is not inside information. In my opinion, from what I've read and heard and that kind of stuff, is if it's going to be successful, where people will believe it, they're going to have to change the definition of a strike, because it will register strikes on pitches that frankly are unhittable by the rule, by the current rule, how the current rule is written. And I think they'll probably do that at some point, because I think they do want this technology to be. And I know a lot of fans do, because they, again, think it's going to solve all the world's problems. And I'm just not sure if that's correct or not. So now, just real quickly to talk about the lack of officials in the country. It's not just baseball. It's practically every sport, and it's practically every state in the union. For example, Little League, you get youngsters learning the game, learning the basics of the game, learning how to field and throw and run and bat. You also, in those levels, many times are going to get umpires that are learning the game. They're learning to umpire. They're young officials. Not always. I mean, you get guys that are much more mature and maybe doing a lot of time. But again, the expectations from these parents with their kids that are just learning the game, but they want these umpires to be major league umpires and never miss anything. Calling Little League can be the toughest thing to do, because they're so inconsistent and they're all over the place. And you expand the strike zone a little bit, otherwise you'll have 17 walks an inning, or there's just, again, applying the art of that game at that level with the science of the rules of that level. That's what a good official, a good umpire does. Unfortunately, parents, they expect major league quality, if not better, umpiring on kids that are 10 years old, 9 years old, or something, that make a ton of mental and physical errors. So just loosen up a little bit, people. Come on. One way to stifle a young kid's interest in a game is to put so much pressure on him that you can't fail. And good grief, in baseball, you failed 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame, right? Hitting. I mean, you're gonna fail. You're gonna make mistakes, and mistakes are gonna happen, especially at that level. You learn from them. That's how you teach them. And that's how you not only teach them the basics of the game. That's how you teach them sportsmanship. That's how you teach them that sometimes you lose and you deal with it and you move on and you learn from it. It's like baseball. When I would miss a call, sure, I'm down on myself, but I also said, okay, what did I do? Let me learn from this mistake. Let me see the video. What was it? My positioning? Did I call it too fast? Should I have gone over, taken a step this way or half a step, whatever the situation is. So hopefully I can take a negative, making it into a positive to learn to move forward. It's exactly what you want to do with kids at that age. You're going to lose. You're going to make mistakes. Okay, instead of, oh my God, it's the umpire's fault or whatever. It's okay. You know what? That happens. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can make this a positive and move forward. And I just don't know if that's happening a lot. I think it's kind of like our politics these days. It's just either this or that, and there's no in between. And if you don't believe what I believe, then you're an idiot. And so you get people umpiring that have potential young guys that, are starting out or whatever. And after a year or two, they say, screw this. I'm not going to do this. This is ridiculous. These people are insane, and it's a shame. It's a shame that games aren't efficient. They got to, schools have to move, JV games just be on Thursdays or whatever, like in football. Now they're playing on some leagues are Wednesdays, some are two. Why? Because they don't have enough officials to cover these games, because guys are fed up with the abuse that they take. And so it's a shame. I think everybody just needs to cool down. Everybody go into a timeout and just let's, reevaluate what's happening here. If your little Johnny is a superstar, well, then maybe get him on some superstar teams. If you really think, but enjoy this time and let them learn from this time, and let the umpires also learn from this time as they, progress in their umpire careers. And let's just all chill out a little bit.
Dale, this was great stuff. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And thank you for everything and sharing everything that you've been through in the league.
Well, I'm going to share it even more. May 1st, my book comes out. The Umpire is out. I think you can see it over here. You can pre-order it now, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other outlets. I'm really excited about it. I've never written a book before. This is it's been quite an experience, a lot of fun. We're just working on it now, but hopefully this summer at some ballparks and cities doing some signings and stuff. So I'm excited about it.
Well, this has been another edition of the Sports Roundup. I'm your host, Brandon Glogau. Thank you again to Dale Scott. Thank you very much.
You got it, Brandon. See ya.